Hello and welcome. So, the butterfly lady who so disrespectfully treated our boy Zenitsu in the last episode finally redeemed herself. But before I talk about her, let's get into this review of episode 20. Actually, before I talk about Shinobu, I want to talk about the very beginning of this episode, which, spoiler alert, Rui didn't die. Big shocker. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us thought he was dead, but I personally had it spoiled on Twitter. But I also buy that he didn't die yet, because while Tanjiro had really meaningful growth, I think it would have been a little unrealistic if he had beat a 12 Kazuki after only being a demon slayer for such a short amount of time. So while I didn't love how Rui had come back and saved himself, I didn't mind it. I bought it. Also, real quickly, in the last review, I said that based on how this series has been going, I figured that Rui was going to get some sort of, not redemption necessarily, but some sort of attempt to humanize his character, which, spoiler, that's what we got in this episode. And we saw the process of how he formed his family, which, that part I didn't buy so much. I mean, it was alright. It wasn't terribly, heart-touching, but I thought it was interesting enough. But it didn't really... I think it did, a mediocre job of humanizing Rui and his character and adding a little bit of depth, but I still didn't really... I wasn't in love with it. I mean, again, it humanized him, but definitely not one of my favorite attempts at humanizing a villain. So then we have the scene with Shinobu. Now, this totally redeemed her character. Like a lot of people were feeling in the last episode, I was pretty annoyed how she treated Zenitsu. I mean, she wasn't disrespecting him explicitly, but he was lying there basically dead, and she was just taking a sweet time, like, oh, are you sure you're dead? You keep talking to your grandpa. Maybe you don't need the antidote to the poison. But no, she could not have done a better job of redeeming herself with this scene. So her name is Shinobu, which doesn't take a lot of thinking. Sounds a lot like shinobi, which supposedly her name with certain kanji is the same as shinobi, which means stealth. And couldn't be a better way to describe her character. The whole thing with her being a butterfly and acting cute, which I found annoying, is actually perfect for her, because her whole thing is to act almost literally like a ninja, like to catch you off guard, and then when you think you have her beat, you're already dead. Now, there are a couple things that reinforce this theme of her being stealthy. The way she moves is very graceful. She has the butterfly uniform, and it lets her float around, or at least it seems like it helps her float around. There was her cool sword. There was the fact that she, so far, is the only one that uses poison. The animation when she used her attack. The music of when she used her attack. I could go on about how totally redeemed she's been and how absolutely cool I think she is now. But I will say, it's not a major plot point, but there is a little interesting contrast, which is this was a fight between a butterfly and a spider. Now, the whole thing about them, the demons being spiders, was that they had the threads, and the threads were meant to be like family bonds, yada yada yada. And Shinobu totally just says, screw that. Bam! One slice, she's done. So I absolutely love Shinobu now. I just want to see more of her, and I want to see more of her absolutely insane fight scenes. And lastly, I really want to talk about the scene where Gyu comes and saves Tanjiro. Now, as you probably heard me say in my previous videos, Gyu is here to show us what Tanjiro needs to be aiming for. Obviously, they have the same master, they have the same job of being a demon slayer, and they have the same style of fighting. So there are a lot of compare and contrast between Tanjiro and Gyu. Now, what I thought was interesting was that when Gyu shows up, he says to Tanjiro, "Good job holding out until I got here." Now, while this was a really subtle comment, I thought this meant a lot for Tanjiro because when they first met, Tanjiro was in a very weak position. He was basically powerless to do anything to the world around him. But anyway, then we see Gyu demonstrate his 11th form of the water breathing to save Tanjiro, even though we thought there were only 10 forms. Now, I thought his move, called Dead Calm, was absolutely brilliant. The whole point of this water breathing fighting style is the more centered you are and the more in control of yourself, the stronger you become and the more you can do to save people around you. And like I've been saying, Gyu is the perfect embodiment of this. It's not that he doesn't have emotion, but he is so in control of himself that you just don't see it. Now, this shouldn't be confused with somebody like Shinobu, who displays a lot of carefreeness, but then hides or uses that to hide her deadly intent. Gyu has these emotions of wanting to kill demons and totally hides it so that he can focus on the task at hand, center himself, and be complete control of the situation. And this is what we see with this dead calm technique. Everything around him disappears, and all you see is him and his weapon, and he's able to obliterate the threads, walk up to Rui, and totally dominate him. So while this episode was a little slower than the last episode, I still loved it, and it had just as much to appreciate. We got to see Tanjiro grow, but we also learn that although Tanjiro has been growing, he has a lot more maturing and learning to do, because while we thought he was strong enough to beat a 12 Kazuki, that's clearly not the case. So, not only are we hyped up from these last 2 episodes, but we are also hyped up to see him grow and potentially get as strong as Gyu. So that was episode 20. If you like this review, make sure to check out the rest of my reviews. Make sure to reach out to me on Twitter so that I can hear what you think of this show. Make sure to like the video, and I hope to hear from you soon.